Endlich ist es soweit. 4 Jahre haben vi auf diesen Augenblick gewartet. Verdensmesterskabet står selvfølgelig over alt andet i fodbold. Crianças por todo mundo. Torcem pelos seus ídolos e seus heróis. Hunderte Millionen sind vor dem Fernseher dabei. Das Stadion ist bis auf den letzten Platz gefüllt.
I was always taking pictures. I love taking pictures. But I realized that from where we were sitting, the soccer players are this big.
Die Weltmeisterschaft steht haushoch über allem anderen.
So I would turn to the side and I'd take pictures of the EXCO members. Because I was one of the family, they would pose for me.
My name is Sepp Blatter.
Sepp pulled me aside and said, "What are you using these pictures for?" From my photo album. And then it was fine. He had no problem with that. He was very, very good at keeping the family together.
Football has become a big, big business, one of the biggest businesses in the world.
So I got into the relationship thinking this was the love of my life.
Fifa is like The Sopranos, but with worse people.
I felt like Cinderella at the ball.
The whole house of cards is falling. All I did was tell them where the house was vulnerable.
And we heard the voice behind us, "May we have a word with you, Mr. Blazer?" I knew that was it, because nobody ever called him Mr. Blazer.
Is FIFA inherently corrupt?
No, sir.
No?
I think individuals are.
Today is a special day in Zurich.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you for bidding for the World Cup.
It's the beginning of the race to become host of the greatest sports event on earth, the Football World Cup.
A World Cup brings the world's television cameras, many people from around the world to your nation. So people are fiercely desperate to try and get hold of the World Cup, and the contests are really, really quite competitive.
Bring the World Cup to the United States.
Bring the World Cup to the United States!
FIFA, the World Football Association, chooses the winner. And 2 candidates stand out.
Nobody seriously believed that it was possible for Qatar, especially given the strength of the bids that they were competing with.
I promise you that if we are successful,
Of course, we're talking about the Americans, who were odds-on favorites to land it.
America will make the world proud.
I never had a budget. Any Qatar entity that we needed to use to help win the bid was at our disposal. This was something that they wanted and they were going to get.
In order to win a bid to host a World Cup, you have to convince a majority of the 24 voters on the FIFA Executive Committee. They are the gods of football.
I came to New York at 19, and I was trying to be an actress. I got a job as a waitress and waited tables for about 8 years, but kept auditioning. And eventually I got into the soap operas.
Hey, Charlie Brett, just what do you think you're doing? Yeah, well, he's been playing that stupid music for hours.
I didn't have much of a career as a model. I think I'm a little bit too short. But I happened to book a job wearing a bikini, and the photographer was friends with Chuck. And he was charming, absolutely charming, and smart, and seemed very interested in me, and I thought that was really nice. We had a drink, and that's when he confessed to me that he just couldn't hold it back anymore. I was the love of his life. And that really surprised me because he was married and I was in a relationship, but he was so charming. I decided to take a leap of faith and started in a relationship with him. It didn't last long. And it ended badly.
Chuck Blazer was a key figure in FIFA, recognized as the godfather of soccer business in North America. He worked behind the scenes and until recently remained unknown to most football fans.
Can you, whoever wants to go first, give a brief history of Chuck Blazer?
Go ahead.
Chuck Blazer, I think, primarily was a salesman, very bright, especially good with numbers and accounting. He first became involved in soccer, coaching his kids' teams. People would say, "How did you get involved in soccer?" And he would say, "I used to be a coach." But he forgot to tell people he used to coach elementary school kids. He was never any kind of high-level soccer coach.
Here we are, Brazil versus Mexico. So stay with us, all right? Don't leave. Don't change that dial.
And I think as he was coaching his kids' soccer team, he started seeing there's this building market here. He became more and more involved in the organization of soccer.
Welcome to Soccer App USA.
Here we are now. We're hearing it from the words of Mr. Blazer that the size of the soccer ball of the MLS is going to be this big.
That's right.
Thank you, Chuck.
My pleasure.
We have a sold-out Coliseum. In the background, you have Los Angeles.
In the early 90s, the first international tournaments take place in the USA.
Something he did for U.S. Soccer Federation was to vastly increase the number of soccer tournaments.
As Secretary General of CONCACAF, the Football Association of North and Central America, Chuck Blazer invents the Gold Cup.
We bring the hottest soccer action. Let's kick it off with the most recent CONCACAF Gold Cup tournament in sunny California. Ooh la la.
CONCACAF at that time was considered kind of a joke. Nobody heard of it. But Chuck saw that as another avenue.
And the crowd is going crazy.
When the game was on, he didn't pay much attention to it. He never talked about teams. He never talked about players. He was really into the business of soccer.
And he was largely responsible for the explosion of soccer in North America.
Wow, that was hot stuff. We love you. Thanks for watching.
That same year, Chuck Blazer is welcomed onto FIFA's board, its executive committee.
I think they saw, Americans as being this sort of
entrepreneurial.
Marketers. They know how to market the sport more successfully. That's what they saw probably in Chuck.
Who exactly are the executive committee of FIFA, and what is their role?
Executive committee of FIFA is like a board of directors. They are members who are elected from each of the confederations, forming a group of 24 men who deal with all of the issues of football.
Anybody that meant anything in the world of soccer, especially for those trying to get the World Cup to their country, he was treated like royalty.
"25 years later, he wrote me a letter, a real letter, with a stamp on it and everything. I was like, wow, nobody does that. And it was a letter basically summing up the last 25 years of his life, saying that he was now dining with kings and queens and that he was the Secretary General of CONCACAF, which I didn't know what that was. So I wrote him back saying, wow, I'm kind of sorry, you're only a secretary. And he says, no, secretary is in in the United Nations. And I went, oh, okay, well, that's wonderful, that's great, congratulations. And he said, when I come back in town, maybe we could have lunch. Thought, okay, I could do lunch. I was a little scared, but I said, it's been 25 years. Everybody gets mellow. And so I went to see him at Trump Tower. So when I went to the apartment, his personal assistant opened the door. And she led me out to the living room. And I looked around and I was like, where the heck is he? And then I saw him in the corner, huddled in a velour bathrobe, just like hunched over, looking up. I said, wow. I said, hello. He said, I have to tell you something. I have been in love with you for over 25 years. And I've never forgotten our relationship. I cried every time I went by your apartment. I can't get over you. And I've made you a mixtape. I've made you a burned CD with songs that I think will tell you how I feel. And then he hit play.
Think of me fondly.
And it was a collection of songs from Phantom of the Opera, all these incredibly wonderful romantic songs. And at that point, I had tears running down my face because I realized he'd gone to a lot of effort for this. He said, please be with me, please. And I will love you and take care of you, and I will care for your children as my own. Please, let us recapture our happiness. The timing was perfect, and the setup was perfect, and I buckled. And so we started our relationship from there. He decided for our first trip to take me to Madrid, and where I saw my very first soccer game. And I was so proud. And I said, this is my very first soccer game. And he said, don't tell people that. But it was amazing. I'd never seen people run so fast. And he said to me at the time, he said, we will be treated like kings and queens. I couldn't figure that one out. I didn't know what FIFA was. I called it FIFA. At first, they were a little standoffish because they didn't know how long I was going to be on the scene, because he was going through quite a number of women. But I had the best time with them. They were so funny, very serious type people, but they could crack a good joke. We couldn't sit down to dinner anywhere unless there was a three-piece string quartet, it was just incredible meals. There was the best wine, entertainment.
The executive committee were very old, and in many cases, not very fit. That's not to be critical, because people get old. People, look at me. People get fat. Look at me.
Most of the exco had been players or coaches or managers or something to do with soccer. Chuck was actually the only one, I think, that never played.
Sepp Blatter. What was your relationship to Sepp?
I liked him, too. I found him charming, and he was always very nice to me. He reminded me sort of like a Swiss Benny Hill, because he always had that little twinkle in his eye, and he was just like your grandfather.
A secret payment of 1 million Swiss francs from ISL arrived by accident in FIFA's bank account.
A lot of people would say there's another side to him.
I never saw that side. I've heard about it, that he controlled everything with an iron fist. If it was an iron fist, it was in a velvet glove.
And our sport, you know it, our sport gives these dramas. Drama in football.
He was very, very good at keeping the family together.
The essence of our sport, which is discipline, respect, and fair play.
Is FIFA inherently corrupt?
No, sir.
No?
I think individuals are.
At least twice a year, all ExCo members and their wives fly to Switzerland. They convene at FIFA's modern headquarters in a boardroom 3 floors below the ground.
We would usually travel Swiss Air, wonderful airline. He would often stay up the entire time and then go right to FIFA House.
I think that FIFA is doing a really excellent job of promoting football around the world. If I look back 10 years, 20 years and see the progress we made, I'm very proud of our accomplishments.
They put a lot of work into it, spreading soccer throughout the world, finding countries that needed support. We'd be there for 3 or 4 or 5 days. There'd always be a dinner. Everything was impeccable. Staying at the Bowerlock, they have the best muesli, and Chuck told me to eat as much as I possibly could because FIFA was paying for breakfast.
They had this sort of like a bank for all the members to go to in the hotel.
He would also pick up $20,000 every trip to Zurich. He would split the money up into 2 packs and take $100 out of each pack, so it was $9,900. Which is legal. I would carry 99 and he would carry 99. That was done every single time.
Where would this cash come from?
FIFA. I mean, their finance department.
Do you know if all of the EXCO members went to FIFA and got cash?
Oh, yeah. As far as I know, everybody did. It was the last stop you made before you went to the airport. You'd go in and get your envelopes. Trump Tower has an incredible view. His apartment was on the 49th floor, and there were always wonderful toys. He always had the coolest gadgets. Max was a blue and gold macaw.
People used to report having seen him in Central Park in New York, going out for his sort of exercise, but his exercise was on one of those segways, and he would go around this enormous man with a parrot on his shoulder.
Go, Max, go, it's okay.
CONCACAF offices were the entire 17th floor of Trump Tower. He decided that he was going to build an aviary in his office at a cost of $150,000. It was all marble floors, all glass walls, overlooked Central Park and Fifth Avenue. He had his own flat-screen TV, Max did, that was usually turned to Animal Planet.
He charged everything to CONCACAF.
And that includes the rent for his apartment for his cats.
They were litter box challenged, so to speak. And then when this other apartment opened up, he said, we could put the cats in there.
An apartment in Trump Tower just for 2 cats?
$5,500 a month.
To find the best possible World Cup host, each EXCO member visits all of the candidate countries. This is a chance for hopeful bidders to make an impression on the FIFA bosses.
I went to Russia. It was pretty amazing the day that Chuck went in to see Putin. All his ministers are lined up in the hallway, and they were all pushed aside so Chuck could come in and meet with Mr. Putin. And the first thing Putin says to him is, you look just like Karl Marx. And Chuck said, I know. Because I got him to grow a beard, because he had 3 chins. He spent all this time shaving. He had to shave twice a day. And I went, what a waste of time. You know, if you grew a beard, it would look better, you know. And he went, oh, that's a good idea. And Putin gives him a high five. England, we just went to London. Queen Elizabeth, I got to meet her, and she was amazing. And it was just like, oh, how are you today? Lovely that you came. I'm so happy you're here and hope you're enjoying your stay. I mean, just incredibly gracious, on point, and as just natural as your next door neighbor. Not at all what I expected a queen to be. And I finished my drink, and I'm standing there with this empty glass, and Chuck says, give me your glass. And I thought he was gonna put it on the bus tray. And he takes it, and he's got his glass, and he puts them both into his pockets. I'm like, you cannot steal from the Queen of England. What are you doing? It's like, you don't, that's so tacky. He goes, I want a souvenir. I had been to Qatar. I was never terribly comfortable there because I'm used to being able to, when I go to a city, getting up in the morning and taking a walk around the city, and you can't do that there. First of all, it's 120 degrees outside.
It was like we were the joke of the whole bidding team. Even people within FIFA didn't take Qatar seriously as they should have.
They don't even have a team. They don't have stadiums. They don't have anything, but they have a lot of money.
We had Bin Hammam. I mean, what better lobbyist? One of the most powerful men in football.
Mohammed bin Hammam was Qatar's top football official. He was also very close to Sepp Blatter. He was going around spreading huge amounts of payments across so many football officials to try and create a groundswell of support for the Qatari bid.
When we went to Mohammed's house, the men and women were separated. And the women were sent to the women's quarters. So we were all gathered upstairs. We had some mint tea. And then we were brought down to eat separately. We had just started the meal when we heard a clap, and we were told the men were finished and we had to leave. And I'm still eating. But it didn't matter. When the men were ready, you have to leave.
Everyone had their mind on winning this event, making money and reputation and recognition. Any means possible was considered by any of them.
In January 2010, the African Football Union comes together in Angola for its annual Congress. This year, they've got a new benefactor. At the cost of $2 million, Qatar's World Cup bid has become the exclusive sponsor of the meeting.
There were 3 of the FIFA Exco members' votes up for grab. Bin Hammam attended this conference, though he's not related to the African Football Federation. One of the people from Bin Hammam's camp was Amadou Diallo. He was also working for the bid at this point. It was quite late at night, around 11 o'clock, and I was called by my boss, who told me that I needed to go translate. One of the first Exco members came in. It is Diallo who then offered $1 million for your federation. There's kind of like a laugh, like 1 million, that's all? Diallo said, well, 1.5 million. We met with all 3 of the FIFA Exco members that evening, one following another. And the same exact scenario, the exact exchange, the promise of $1.5 million, and the promise afterwards of support for the Qatar 2022 bid. It was very open on the table. This is what we're giving you. This is what we want. Yes, no, thank you, goodbye.
So there was no doubt in your mind that this was an exchange, $1.5 million for a vote?
Oh, no. There was no doubt we had all 3 members vote.
I think that we can trust every one of the members. You know, at the end of the day, they're football people.
New Zealand is home to the world's smallest football association, Oceania. The Sunday Times has gotten wind that Oceania's sole member of the Exco has received generous offers of financial support.
We had 2 tip-offs about irregularities in the process and that people were offering incentives for people to vote. And we went to people who'd been on the executive committee in previous hosting contests. All those people told us there was only one way to win a World Cup. We had to pay bribes. And we decided to go undercover. We posed as lobbyists for a group of American companies who wanted to support the American bid. We went as part of that work to go and see Reynard Tamari, who was the Oceania FIFA Executive Committee voter.
There are only 24 FIFA Executive Committee members, and each vote is really, really important. And it would be very useful for us to know if any have offered to finance this project.
Yes.
We talked about how his vote might be influenced if we were to give money to Oceana.
Is it something, say, for example, that our consortium might be able to finance?
Yes, this kind of thing I'm keen to discuss. If I compare with the proposal coming from, it's nothing. Nothing. With some, we are talking about 10 to 12 million US.
When we showed this to FIFA, they suspended him, and he was suspended, I think, for a year.
So without a doubt, we can trust them.
The week before the vote, Michel Platini receives an extraordinary invitation. He's invited to lunch at the French presidential palace. As head of UEFA, the European Association, Platini's support is crucial in becoming host of the World Cup.
I saw a person who gave me very precise, detailed information on a meeting that had taken place at lunchtime at the Élysée Palace, at which were present the President of the French Republic, Nicolas Sarkozy. One of the guests was Michel Platini, of course, the Vice President of FIFA and President of UEFA at the time, but also two very high-ranking representatives of Qatar, one of whom is the current Emir, Sheikh Tamim. And it was quite clear, I mean, the way that the person who told me about that, these are his words, not mine. He basically said, your president has told this guy to vote for this guy as if he wants to sell his planes. So, okay. Michel Platini is a very good friend, has known Monsieur Sarkozy for a very long time. And actually, I think nobody in France doubts the fact that there was direct political pressure. He had been made to understand that it would be a very good idea to vote for these people rather than to vote for the Americans, to whom it promised his vote.
Hello, everybody. I want to thank President Blatter and all the members of the FIFA Executive Committee for allowing me to speak with you today. Together, you've given the American people an extraordinary opportunity to welcome the world to our shores as host of the 2022 FIFA World Cup.
You know, we hadn't had a World Cup since the 90s, so it was our turn. We'd heard rumors about, bribes and stuff, but I wasn't too worried. I knew what the bid book said, and I knew who should be getting this.
December 2nd, 2010. How do you remember that day?
It was one of the busiest days I ever had at FIFA.
David, what are the chances? How are you feeling? Just a couple of hours to go, David.
We're happy and we're ready for a presentation.
We had heads of state, we had a large number of very high-profile figures, international figures coming for the presentations because each bidding country wanted to be in their best possible image.
Prime Minister David Cameron, how are you feeling?
Well, we got a great bid, so we just got to go in there and give it everything that we've got.
We had, former President Bill Clinton. We had the English Prime Minister at the time. We had members of the royal family. So it was extremely busy, extremely colourful, extremely high profile.
The different groups, that were up for the bid, they were all huddled secretly. And everyone was very nervous. What do you think our chances are? You think we can do this? You think we're going to win?
A warm welcome together with my executive committee. Finally, the elective college of the World Cup, the FIFA's World Cup.
To those of you whom I had the pleasure of meeting in South Africa, it's good to see you again, and I hope your time will permit.
We had a tight timetable, about 15 minutes between each bid committee's presentation.
Thank you very much.
Someone from FIFA asked me to ask Michel Platini, who was deep in conversation with Zidane, and said, would you mind, gentlemen, taking a conversation outside the committee room so the next bid committee can prepare itself? Well, Michel Platini was extremely annoyed to be asked to leave the room and looked at me in the most arrogant and aggressive manner. Zinedine Zidane was a consultant to the Qatar bid.
And the World Cup in Qatar will send an important message to this football-obsessed region.
The clincher, I think, was the Sheikha. from Qatar. She was impressive.
President Blatter, members of the executive committee, when do you think it is the right time for this to come to the Middle East?
And then she took a step forward and said it louder.
When the time has come, the time is now. Thank you very much.
Chuck was brought in with the other EXCO members ahead of us, and they were sequestered in the, like, wherever they were voting. When they finally let us go into the room, as I walk in this big auditorium, I see Chuck sitting there, and I look at him, and he looks at me, and he doesn't look happy. And I'm thinking, oh, this isn't gonna be good. And I had my camera, so I took this picture. They made me walk past him. I wasn't allowed to speak to him. Made me walk past him to where the wives were sitting.
I could speak more and more, but I have to
Es
announce
kommt
it. And this is the
das Kuvert mit dem Namen drin.
And then they start the process, and Sepp gets up and he opens the envelope.
The winner to organize the 2022 FIFA World Cup is Qatar.
Katar, das ist natürlich eine Riesenüberraschung. Man hört die Explosion förmlich weltweit. Das ist eine Riesenüberraschung.
Qataris jumped up and were, all excited. The rest of the audience, I think, was in shock.
Nicht die USA, sondern das klitzekleine Katar bekommt den Zuschlag.
There were loads of rumors of bribery floating about before the vote, and the result of it, when people were looking at each other, said, why would anybody in their right minds choose Qatar? Bill Clinton, who was in Zurich for the vote, he went back to his hotel room and smashed the mirror with an ashtray. Michel Platini, as he confirmed later, had actually told the Americans that he would support their vote.
He and Franz Beckenbauer were the two fabulous footballers who had great knowledge of the game. It seems inconceivable that someone with such a knowledge of the game would want the World Cup to be played in such searing heat as Qatar. Platini must have had another reason for voting for Qatar.
And which is when I think the real troubles of FIFA started. It was all because of that decision.
Alongside me today is Marilyn Blanks, who will assist with the draw.
Thank you, Idolo. The preliminary round and group stage of the Champions League produced 63 hard-fought games between 24 teams from 13 different countries throughout the CONCACAF region.
The relationship had deteriorated over time, where it had gotten more abusive, psychologically. When I was with him, I was very restricted as to my friends. He was always around me. He was always telling me what to do. Even the color of my hair, the type of clothes I wore, everything was controlled by him. So when I was on my own, I was like, oh my gosh, what should I wear today? I had gotten to the point where I was almost dependent on him telling me what I should be doing. I was like, how the hell did I get here?
Mary Lynn, please pull a ball from the group winner's pot.
He was more distant, and despite swearing his love for me, he still had quite a few girlfriends on the side. And I had assumed that he would get rid of them when I arrived, but that was not the case. I called him on it, and he got very angry. One night, one thing led to another, and I was taking a bubble bath when he tried to smash the door down. I was panicked. I was terrified because I had been beaten up by him before, but I still wanted to make it work. I thought I could make it work.
People were piqued, people were angry, and people became very curious. It attracted the press hounds, who thought there was really something very, very fishy going on.
I was in contact with two of the main sponsors in FIFA, and they told us, we trust you, but please bring back this boat of FIFA in, I would say, in better waters. We are not in a crisis. We are only in some difficulties, and these difficulties will be solved inside our family.
They felt like they needed an independent body to come in as a sheriff, if you will.
The new investigator was a man called Michael Garcia.
Garcia came up with a very, very strong reputation.
Today, an indictment was unsealed in federal court charging 32 members of one of New York's most notorious crime organizations, the Genovese family of La Cosa Nostra.
We're talking about one of the top investigators on the planet. He got really interested in the bidding process for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. He was like a dog with a bone. I think Michael Garcia went further than perhaps he was wanted to go.
Michael Garcia, after 2 years, wrote a very long report. And he submitted it to FIFA. And the reaction was nobody in the world would be allowed to see Michael Garcia's report.
Wir wissen als Profis, wie wir diesen Bericht aufbewahren, sodass nicht zugänglich ist.
The decision not to release the report was the ExCo's decision.
It's hardly in the interest of the executive committee to publish a report that is filled with allegations against themselves.
Exactly, and that's why they didn't.
This is, I believe, a very comprehensive report. It's a very detailed report. The more that is public, and the more that people can see what is done and agree with what was done or disagree with what was done, then those issues can be resolved and the organization can move on.
So should we be less secretive?
And it was only under a lot of pressure that FIFA decided to write a cut-down version of the Garcia report, which Blatter was spinning, telling everybody was great because it had cleared Qatar of any wrongdoing.
And the minute Garcia got hold of this resume, he slammed the door and he said, don't want to have anything to do with these people anymore.
It was all a bit of a disaster for FIFA.
Excuse me? FIFA had always had a history of being able to control their destiny.
Where is my security? Come on. Come on.
Eventually, they thought that it wouldn't hurt them.
Here we go, Seth. That's Seth, all there.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag, Mr. Blätter.
Do you prefer that I go to a Texan English or to the Oxford English or just my Wallis Berg English?
When you opened the envelope, did you know that Qatar had won?
Yes. I knew it because... And I tell you, would have been another verdict, we wouldn't have all these big problems we are facing now. There was this political intervention by French state president, and then things have changed.
Michel Platini had informed you. Did he explain why the president of France was telling him to vote for Qatar?
No.
According to Platini himself, he felt a subliminal pressure during lunch with the French president and the Emir of Qatar. And in the years since, the relationship between France and Qatar has only grown warmer. I have been told that the Qataris told Sarkozy, if you want to sell your airplanes, tell this guy to vote for us.
I don't know if it was the Rafale, so the aircraft jets, you know, for the military, or the Airbus. Because, you know, Qatar bought a lot of Airbus. Finally, they bought both. We are just 1 week, 10 days before the final attribution. So all the members of the family, they came at the Élysée Palace.
The relationship between Qatar and France, and French football in particular, flourished after this. They took control of Paris Saint-Germain in 2011. They started to invest huge amounts of money in this particular club. They also invested an absolute fortune in putting together a new TV network, which in many ways gave French professional football the oxygen it so desperately needed because it was running out of money, basically.
You know, at the time they were buying Paris Saint-Germain, they have more than 50 billion of dollars of exceed in their budget. So when the emir wake up the morning, when he shave, he said, what will I buy today? A team, an hotel, a company? All the big company, the French big company of the infrastructure, they are in Qatar. They are building the tramway, the metro. So for us, it's also a big contract.
This is the pivotal moment when the Europeans switched their allegiance from the Americans to the Qataris.
Et sur l'amitié entre le Qatar et la France. Merci à tous.
So you can see how, in terms of macroeconomics and geopolitics, the whole thing has worked.
If we look at what happened after the vote for Qatar, there's a pattern of Qatar investing heavily in France after Sarkozy had interfered in the vote. What's the difference then between political interfering and buying the World Cup?
A vote for the World Cup is not made by buying votes. It is the political interference. It is not the same that an individual is going to a man and give him 100,000 or whatever, whatever gifts he gave him to vote. That's a difference.
The Sunday Times is now alleging it has evidence beyond doubt that proves Qatar bribed its way to winning the right to stage the tournament in 2022.
Millions of secret documents leaked to the Sunday Times.
Bank statements, letters, emails by Mohammed bin Hammam
to buy support and influence with football officials around the world.
What we could see in the documents was that Mohammed bin Hammam has paid Tamari a bribe, which made sure that a vote against Qatar didn't go ahead.
When I read that particular piece, I thought, this is unbelievable stuff. If this is true, this is the smoking gun.
Are you pleased at what the Sunday Times did in uncovering corruption inside your organisation, inside FIFA?
No, I'm not pleased about that, but it gives us the opportunity to clean a little bit whatever has to be cleaned.
The part of the Garcia report that I found most interesting was the part about Reynald Tamari. Mr. bin Hammam has paid Tamari, he's bought a vote. Would you agree?
I don't agree with you because I don't know the story. I know nothing about that. I just learned it now.
It's in Judge Eckhart's summary of Garcia's report.
The vote was rigged. Whichever way you look at it, the vote was rigged directly. But for some reason, people are choosing to ignore what has been put in front of them.
Definitely I have not studied the report. I have surely seen it, but I have not studied the report. Nobody put something for the president, you should know that.
I'm determining at this point in time whether I wanted to remain with FIFA. I was concerned about endemic problems and vulnerabilities to greed-based corruption in the organisation. For my own professional interest, I assessed each then member of the Executive Committee on an integrity meter. I concluded that a significant number of Executive Committee members had serious issues of integrity.
Willkommen in der Familie.
To such an extent that I decided that I could no longer work for FIFA and resigned.
Das ist deine Karte. Foto? Nein, mit dem kannst du gratis Fußball schauen. Okay?
I was interested in the truth being arrived at in FIFA, and the FBI provided one of the best mechanisms to arrive at that truth. I went to the USA and I met with several FBI officers who were dealing with this area. I helped them understand the nature of the organisation that they were investigating. You see, the whole house of cards is falling. All I did was tell them where the house was vulnerable.
That day when we were coming out of Trump Tower and we heard the voice behind us, "May we have a word with you, Mr. Blazer?" I knew that was it, because nobody ever called him Mr. Blazer. He looked at me and he said, "Mary Lynn, go to the restaurant. I'll see you later." They took him into the atrium, and that's where they cut the deal. He showed up 45 minutes later, and then we had dinner. It was a very tense dinner. And then we went back to Trump, and once upstairs, he told me, "They've got me for RICO." I said, "What do you mean, RICO?" RICO, why do I know that? And, I said, "That's like the mob, like Capone and stuff." And he goes, "Exactly." And I said, "But that means you're a crook." And he goes, "Yes."
Chuck, for years, had been doing this, and he hadn't been paying tax.
And I freaked. I was like, what do you mean you didn't pay your taxes? How can you not pay taxes? Everybody pays taxes. Somehow he had slipped under the radar.
He was never on the salary of CONCACAF. So every check was made out to his offshore account, which is how he dodged. The IRS never got a statement for his salary.
The allegations against Chuck Blazer were that whatever he negotiated, he took his 10%.
So when the FBI started to investigate FIFA, he was an obvious weak point.
So you have a choice. You can spend the rest of your life in jail or you talk. He was to wear a wire and meet with various people in person or on the phone, and the phones were tapped. And he was to elicit information from them to expose the bribes. And I begged him not to do it. I said, "Please, find another way. Don't do this to these people." I consider them my family. And I said, "If you do this, you're going to put all these people in jail." And now I understand that there was corruption involved and stuff, but from my point of view, they were my friends. I babysat their children. I said, "Please don't do this."
I declare open the Games of London.
Soccer is part of the Olympics, and so therefore all these people would be there. So it was more like a social thing. It wasn't the pressure that you have at the World Cup. This was much freer. He wrote out letters to everybody saying, "Oh, I'd love to have dinner with you in London," and it was sort of to lure them in.
He was a good fellow. He liked life, he liked restaurant, he liked ladies.
Chuck, who was everybody's best friend, had access to everybody because of his, his being part of the FIFA Executive Committee. He could go to people and lead the conversation onto a quite delicate terrain and then record it, and people would perhaps start to sing.
So this was a list of people who would be secretly taped by Chuck Blazer.
At the 2012 Olympics in London, at the Mayfair Hotel, including Sepp Blatter.
And it was a one-stop shopping for the feds. And so it just began. They had a minivan, and he would go into the van, he told me, and they would hook him up with wires.
Chuck was fitted with this key holder, which had a microphone.
They told him, throw it on the table when you go to dinner with people. And he went, ah, that's so blue collar. I would never throw my keys on the table. And they went, just do it.
He was a hidden agent. He was wired. He was wired.
He had a series of meetings where he recorded them with his key fob on a restaurant or a bar tabletop.
It's not only a non-respect to FIFA for football, but it's a non-respect of the IOC and the organization of the games in London to Her Majesty the Queen, finally.
Yeah, I mean, FIFA is like The Sopranos, but with worse people. So it's the typical FBI technique.
I knew I had to get out, but I didn't know how. Once he was away, because he was away at the Olympics for some 6 weeks, I had breathing room. As the weeks went by, I went, oh yeah, I don't really like wearing this. I don't want to wear that color nail polish anymore. And I started thinking on my own, but it took distance for me to be able to do that. I was afraid to leave him while he was in town because I had been beaten up by him before. And then when he came back and said he was going off to the Bahamas, I said, okay, go. And that's when I decided I would make my move. And I did.
Think of me fondly when we've said goodbye. Remember me once in a while, please promise me you'll try.
6 top football officials have been arrested over corruption charges at football's world governing body, FIFA.
Allegations of payoffs to the officials who decided where to hold the next 2 Soccer World Cup. One U.S. official, Charles Blazer, reportedly wore an undercover wire.
27th of May 2015, this was for me like an earthquake or a bomb coming on me.
The Bower Lock is like a fortress. So the idea that they were able to get in there and arrest those people that blew my mind. The wives were in the lobby crying. My girlfriends, they're crying, and there's nothing anybody could do.
Did you know that this was the result of Chuck's work?
Oh, yeah. He was their star witness. It had to be all him. He knew how everything worked, and he told them.
They were expected to uphold the rules that keep soccer honest and to protect the integrity of the game. Instead, they corrupted the business of worldwide soccer to serve their interests and to enrich themselves.
I could never understand the activity in Switzerland with the American police intervening in my country. Why the hell they were at a sudden so much interested in football? Because they have not been given the World Cup 2022.
Do you think that Qatar should get to keep its World Cup?
Based on its bidding history, I think they didn't do it any differently than anyone else.
After his stint as an FBI informant, Chuck Blazer gets his day in court. In his confession, Blazer describes how members of the ExCo took bribes when selecting France and South Africa as hosts of the World Cups in 1998 and 2010. Shortly after, Der Spiegel reveals how Germany became host of the 2006 World Cup.
We know now that Germany, also in 2006, there were bribes involved. It's not Qatar that made the rules. I think it's FIFA that made the rules, and Qatar just played by those rules.
When FIFA started over 100 years ago, it was populated by a small number of volunteers who loved the game. It's only the past 15 years where FIFA began to realize enormous sums of money.
To make money and to spend money to bring soccer to places where it doesn't exist. That was the idea of FIFA.
Verdens mest magtfulde fodboldboss, nemlig FIFA-præsident Sepp Blatter, blev i dag suspenderet af FIFAs egen etiske komité.
Once they saw hundreds of millions, tens, hundreds, billions of dollars coming in, they were blinded by the lure of greed.
How much do they really believe in the sport if they pocket half of the income? You know, these kids who don't have a soccer ball to play with because Chuck Blazer wants to spend an extra $500.
Do you look back on it with regret?
I don't regret the adventures. I was so honored to have those moments, and I will treasure them forever. I don't regret that at all. I just wish I'd been with a nicer man. I got into the relationship thinking this was the love of my life and that I was going to reclaim this awesome relationship. And it was never that. I was the front.
It is inescapable that FIFA must rebuild itself or it will die.
FIFA vælger ny præsident, og det sker efter schweizeren Sepp Blatter måtte forlade posten efter anklager om korruption.
In the history of 114 years of FIFA, is perhaps the most important day.
Qatar 2022. A lot of people want to look at the election today as a new beginning.
When you speak about FIFA, you don't speak about football anymore. And we have to bring back football.
Ladies and gentlemen, the election of the 9th president of FIFA, Gianni Infantino.
You will be proud of FIFA. You will be proud of what FIFA will do for football. We enter now into a new era.
Of course, the World Cup will take place in Qatar in 2022. There has been a lot of allegations. I have not seen one single fact. I think we have to move on.
All the best.